Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna be my backup singer.
That song reminds me of Will Smith, who I'm just not a fan of at all. So it's like, ever since he covered that song,
yeah, forgot about that.
Sorry about that.
Wish
I could.
See, I generally like Will Smith. I mean, I think that's the thing though. I'm a Will Smith, grew up on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air film fan, and not necessarily the Will Smith, the hip hop artist. Like, that's not how I know him. So I mean, I do know him from that. Like, I had some of his albums and like the Wild Wild West stuff that he did, but like I guess that was post. Like, I'm aware. Like, I obviously listened to his stuff, but I'm more. I guess I'm of the age where Will Smith was always the actor who rapped versus the rapper who acted.
Yeah, parents just don't understand.
Yeah,
when that one hit, I remember. Now, of course, as a kid, I thought that was a fun song. Where he lost me is some of his performances, and then more of his performances. And I'm just like,
look, he had a bad run for a little bit.
It's not the quality of the movies he was in. I don't hold that against performers. It's just, I just didn't care for his delivery. And then, I think the real turning point on the sourness is when he got up there and accepted his, MTV Music Award or whatever, and said, "Look, yo, I've never killed nobody, and I won a rap award." It's like, bro,
the bar is low.
It was just like, So but it's fine. If I dislike him, he is extremely successful and wealthy.
He is unbothered.
I
think he has other problems, though. If you read the tabloids, our opinion of him is the least of his worries at this moment.
That's the buzz.
But we won't get into that. We will stay away from such things.
Yes, thank you.
Because what do we know? But what we do know is comics, and we talk about them every once in a while, or at least we try to. We try to do a little bit of a good job of doing that, because we are the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. And hey, everybody, hi, how you doing? Hope you're
creative
well.
Open there.
I'm trying. It's a Sunday morning. I'm a little groggy. Hadn't got my wheels spinning yet. But this is episode 203, 204. Didn't look. Told you I'm not ready. I'm thrown off.
Yeah.
The events of the past week have got me just rocked. I'm back on my heels. So, but as usual, I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie. I do know that.
Matt Trogdon.
I wore a name tag this morning just so I could remind myself to see how I'm doing. So how's your week been, bud?
It's been good. It's been very, very busy, but I prefer that. I'm one of those people that I hate feeling, what's the word I'm looking for? Not constructive.
Right.
Like, so when I'm
Stagnant.
really busy and getting things done,
Complacent.
I like to get things done.
Yeah.
That's a better way of saying I like being busy. That's not really accurate. I like getting things done.
I don't like being complacent. Like, that's where I'm at. Episode 204. I was correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
Correct-ish.
Ish.
That's what I'm aiming for, is correct-ish.
Mediocrity is what I strive for on a daily basis.
The horseshoes of accuracy is what I shoot for.
That's like a hand grenade of quality. As long as it's in the ballpark, it's fine. You'll hit it with some good shrapnel. So I had my last class of the semester this week.
Oh,
so
nice.
I have only finals to do. So after this weekend, I am taking the weekend to, finish up everything, turn in my last assignments, and then watch some TV and kind of coast through the weekend a little bit, and then studying happens.
What are you going to watch first?
That's a good question. So I finished up Lost in Space because I'm late to parties.
I don't even know what that is.
Lost in Space, it's a TV show. I think it's Netflix. Second season wrapped up. Third season's about to come out. It's based off of the old Lost in Space TV show. It's Danger Will Robinson.
Yeah.
It's really good. I enjoyed it.
Huh.
I went last night and watched a movie called The Electrical Life of I forget the guy's name. It stars Benedict Cumberbatch.
Mm.
If you remember, or if you've ever seen these turn of the century cat paintings where like cats are all like in the English countryside and they're on picnics and they're all whimsical and you know, some of them are anthropomorphic, other ones are just cats just doing cat things. The film that's about Benedict Cumberbatch plays this character and is a interesting fellow. Was, you know, some English from a good family in England, but ended up marrying his, you know, governess that was teaching his kids. And of course, that slid them down the social rabbit hole. She ends up passing away. Spoilers. And it just kind of sends his life on a whole trajectory. Well, they find a cat and raise the cat. And at this time, cats were not, like, there weren't quote-unquote cat people. Like, cats weren't inside pets. They were mousers. They just kind of did their things. And this is at the end of the 1800s in England. They weren't proper pets. Like, you had dogs, not cats. As far as English society went. And he, through his art, through his illustrations of these cats, kind of changed culture and changed the way people look at cats and see cats.
I see, so it's his fault.
Yeah, he did this. It's a really good film. Really good. You know, Benedict Cumberbatch is this is one of his quieter roles, but he has an emotional arc in this film that is like, there's a reason he is who he is. This is not Doctor Strange. This is high A art. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So,
nice.
Don't know what's on the agenda to watch stuff other than that, but
thought you might have had a lineup ready.
No, you know, I'll push play, see what's happening. I might go pull up Amazon Prime and watch some Criterion stuff. I don't know. I don't have an agenda. Most of the time when I turn the TV on, it's just an excuse to like zone out.
Yeah.
That's just where I'm at. So, give me some recommendations. What you got?
I'm the worst for recommendations because I watch so very little TV. Now, if you want a documentary recommendation, I'm your man.
Yeah.
But for television shows, I'm the last to catch everything.
Right.
I don't watch TV.
Well, like I said, I'm new to the party when it comes to Lost in Space. I think that that was pre-pandemic when it came out.
Was it?
There is a show called Sex Ed. That's a British comedy TV show that's came over here. That is delightful. Essentially, it's a high school that, you know, it's kids like bucking against the system when it comes to they're trying to teach them abstinence and, you know, just a very limited quote unquote straight way of thinking about sex. And these kids are like, no, we're teenagers, we fuck, like condoms, and here's the gender spectrum and here's the new age, and it's hilarious. It's really fun. So if you need recommendations, check that out. You'll laugh. I'm not a comedy person, and I laughed my ass off.
Yeah.
It's fun stuff.
English comedy is different.
It is very different, and it hits different.
It definitely does.
So
definitely.
But in the meantime, this week I did manage to read a few comics, drop a short stack. We should probably acknowledge the obvious that there are two of us here.
Yep.
Craig had to miss another Sunday, and that's fine. You know, like last time we said, and he's okay with us saying this, there are some family health issues going on with some people that are near and dear to him that he's having to help with, and so he's taking another day to do that. As we have always said, and should be the rule in life regards to anything, family comes first. So, you know, our little podcast and reading comics and all these little hobbies that we do, don't ever put a hobby in front of real life. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. Yeah. So he is doing the right thing, and getting done what he needs to get done. So we want to send him a lot of love and send his family a lot of love as they're working through some shit. So, you know, hopefully they know that they are in our hearts and our minds are with them as they're pushing through a kind of a difficult time. So, and that's all that needs to be said about that. Now back to what I was saying, regularly scheduled comic books. Start us off with a short stack, man. Tell me about a couple books you read this week that really that lived in your brain for a second.
So I picked up the trade paperback, the first collection of the first run of Red Room by Ed Piscor, the Fantagraphics book. You know, I usually don't do that. You know, I'm usually buying comics and I don't ever pick up the trade paperback.
Not much of
collection.
a double dipper.
Yeah, but I picked up this one because there are about 70 pages of new material in it.
Oh, nice.
Most of what compromises the pencils and rough layouts
Okay.
of what he did.
Process
And,
pages. Loves it.
Yeah, a lot of process pages. And most of these process pages are pages that he ended up not using.
Mm-hmm.
These were his ideas as he laid them out, and it was just really interesting for me to see what that looked like versus what the story ended up being, which was in most cases completely different than what these original layouts were. And then there's just a lot of insight on where he got his inspiration and ideas for this book. Yeah, if you know what the material of the book,
say he might want to wipe his browser history.
yeah. Of course, and he was working on this book during the pandemic and the lockdown. A lot of that's where he spent a lot of time working on this, if not, almost all of it. So it's just a really good collection for all this bonus material. This is a book that I continue to recommend. It's just so well done. It's very unique, very, very edgy, pushes boundaries, no doubt about it. So I like, and what's interesting, I follow his YouTube page, Cartoonist Kayfabe, him with Jim Rugg and sometimes Tom Scioli. And what he mentioned on the page is like, if you're going to order this in your comic book store, do so now, because apparently one of the book buyers that works for Amazon is a fan of Cartoonist Kayfabe and bought about 50% of the entire produced stock of this book.
No shit.
So the comic book stores only got access to about half of the first run. So after they're gone from the comic book stores, the distributors, Amazon's going to be the only place you can get it.
Yeah.
Until those are sold out, and then they can do another print. So, kids, if you're halfway interested or more, get your comic book shop to pick it up now, or you won't be able to get it there.
Yeah, I read the first issue of that, and it was amazing. It's just not for me. But part of me wants to pick it up just for the process pages. I love process pages. Yeah. As somebody who is not a visually artistic person, I can't draw. I just can't. It's great to be able to live in the mind of somebody who can.
Yeah.
Just to see that kind of stuff. So part of me is like toying with the idea of buying that, just because, and I will legit probably not read the entirety of the story. I'll just flip to the back of the book. So, but I want to see what it looks like.
It's intriguing. The book's intriguing to me because it's so subversive and it feels so like a head shop book of old.
Yeah,
and I just that whole era is fascinating to me. But anyway, secondly on my short stack is number 2 from DC Horror, Soul Plumber.
I still love the title.
Yeah, this one continues to be wacky. Of course, the concept is Marcus Parks, Henry Sobrowski, Ben Kissel. It's written by Marcus Parks and Henry Sobrowski. Layouts are John McCrae and P.J. Holden with inks by John McCrae. This is a book. It's just very, very unique in the DC line. It's It's still amazing to me that this is coming from DC because of the subject matter. It's very gory and psychologically disturbing. Frankly, I was hoping to tell Craig about it because this seems like it's tailor-made for him and his horror, the appeal of the horror genre to him. Thirdly, on my short stack is, once again, I'm talking about The Sumerian from Ablaze Comics. This is number 2 in the final issue of the Beyond the Black River run. Have you read this yet?
I've read the first issue. I have not read the second issue.
So I'm going to read the final quote in this. It's not a spoiler, but it's just, this is great stuff. Civilization is a whim of circumstance. Barbarianism will ultimately always triumph. Conan's outlook on life. I love that ending, man. That is good stuff.
Conan the Philosopher.
Also, this one was interesting in the way that Conan is illustrated. It's a very non-traditional way of drawing Conan. And it's this one that I have anyway. It's got an excellent cover by Richard Pace.
Yeah.
Non-traditional way of drawing Conan, but really cool.
I felt that same way about the first issue when I looked it up. I was like, I've never seen this drawn this way. And I like it. I like it a lot.
He's got a very much young, tribal look versus muscle-bound barbarian.
Right.
And I really appreciate. Reminded me of the Jason Momoa version of Conan.
I was literally just thinking that. Like, that's what it put me in the headset for. Because when he made that film, he was not like the size that he is now. He was not just this giant like slab of beef. He wasn't small by any means, but he was much more slender,
just leaner.
Yeah. Pre Game of Thrones, I think, when that was made. I had to go back and check the dates, but very much that early, just like skinnier, smaller waist, but still looks like he could, do things.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, just depending on what those things are, you want him to do. So nice. I've got to get to reading that. So I read a few things this week that throw on my short stack. The first of which, since you've ended with an Ablaze series, I will start with one. And this is from Ablaze Comics, Guillaume March's Laura and Other Stories. Now, I picked this up. I saw it on the shelf. I actually didn't know it was published, but I picked this up piggybacking off of how much I really enjoyed Carmen. I spoke about that on the show several times. I absolutely love that. Don't love this nearly as much. It's not bad by any means. It left me feeling lukewarm, and it's fine. It feels the art in Laura was so outstanding. Like, he has one of the sexiest lines on the page in that book. I mean, and I'm not just talking about the way that he draws those characters. He just has a line that's just like, oh my God. That's not in this. I don't know if it's just that maybe the colorist or the way it was rendered did something different, or if maybe he drew this before. Like
did he ink it too?
No, it's got a different inker, and that might have been the case too. Which I did not go back and look. I did not go back and look to see. Actually, no, he did ink it himself.
Okay,
script, art, and colors all by him. So, I don't know. Maybe he drew this before he drew some of the other stuff, even his Batman stuff. Like, this just looks like an earlier version. It looks way more rendered digitally. I don't know if there's just like a skim. Like, I feel like I'm gonna like slide this over to you and you look through it and tell me, just kind of see if you get some of that same feeling. But it's not bad by any means. It's a fun story. Young girl is doing that. She's lonely. The dude that she likes has a girlfriend, but they're trying to be friends. And it's just her trying to navigate the world and feeling lost and feeling alone and it's a very slice of life kind of book. But it just doesn't have the visual strength that Carmen did, which was a little disappointing.
Man, I tell you what, the way it feels to me is that's all in the colors.
And it very well may be. It very well may be.
That feels like that vibe's coming from the colors.
There was just something about, like I said, I don't know if it's the way it was rendered, but the lines don't feel as crisp to me either. And at the end of the day, it's just a visual choice.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm gonna check out the second issue just to follow through, because I do like Guillaume March, and why not? Also, I think we're tracking each other here. From the House of DC, I picked up and actually got caught up on everything to do with this book this week, like all the peripheral around it. Superman, Son of Kal-El, number 5. This is the issue that has had the internet aflutter, that everybody's been talking about, where Jonathan Kent reaches over and kisses his friend, this young man who is a journalist that he has been buddying with, that they're trying to solve mysteries and problems, and they share a moment. And John, it's funny because in this book, as much noise as it's made, it's a very quiet moment. There's not they don't get into an explanation, and he doesn't pontificate it, he doesn't question it. They just share kind of a very fluid moment where there's this like, okay, we're going to kiss now, and there's no fireworks, no big explanation, anything, and that was kind of cool. Sometimes you don't need to have a big introspective exposition about why you want to kiss somebody.
So DC wasn't like congratulating themselves on that panel.
Nope, not a bit. It did not feel that way at all. Now, in that, like I said, I went through and I've read all of these issues, got caught up, read Action Comics. Fun stuff. I love John Kent being Superman. It is awesome. He has a great outlook on things. Young. I've said before, I've had a hard time with John Kent being a grown up, like being a teenager, because I love Super Sons so much. Like, I just love those young characters. Him and Damien, the chemistry that was on that page, I love that. And so it's almost like watching your kid grow up. You just hate to see it.
Yeah.
But even though you like who they're going to grow up to be, so I've had a hard time with that, like just processing that, because I don't want to see like the magic that I love about Super Sons lost because they age out of it. But that's just what happens. That's something you got to deal with. So, and then last but not least, over from Vault Comics, World of Darkness #2. Now, I was a huge fan of the Vampire the Masquerade series. Loved everything about that. This kind of picks up where that left off. Except this now, this actually has to do with some of the characters who are in the back matter of those books. Like there was a story written by Teenie Howard that heavily featured one of the Nosferatu, like little rat-looking sewer-dwelling vampires. This features him quite a bit, but it also adds in the mix of werewolf. This is more of a werewolf story than anything. So you get to see some of the pack. And where the werewolves in the other story were really just kind of spoken about in hushed tones, they take front and center in this book. So if you're looking for a werewolf story, check out World of Darkness. First and second issues have been rock solid. So and it's Vault. I can't say enough good things about Vault. In fact, I will say more good things about Vault later on in the show because it's Vault, and I want to be on their payroll.
A lot of good stuff coming out of Vault.
So fucking good. It has been a minute since we have talked about a Marvel book. I feel like almost a week. So, and they say 7 days, it makes 1 week.
Yeah.
So
I better check that out. Make sure that's true.
Do your math. I'm a lawyer. We don't do math. We'll tell you that there's 8 days if we can profit off of it. We got together this week and we decided, hey, some new books came out. We should probably check them out, find out what we want to read. There's lots of good stuff that came out. And it was a little bit of a tough decision because there was another Marvel #1, Venom, came out that we
not a tough
about.
decision for this guy.
Well, no. It was for me because it's Al Ewing, and I'll read just about anything. And I did buy it. I'll read anything Al Ewing put out. But you came back, and I'm actually glad you did because I forgot this came out this week. I didn't. I missed it on the shelf, and I wasn't thinking about it, even though I've been excited for this book for a long time. Now, the book is The Thing. Written by Walter Mosely with art by Tom Reilly. Just beautiful book. Gorgeous colors by Jordi Bellaire. Before we dive into this too much, you got to give a spoiler warning because that's what you're supposed to do in the year of our Lord 2021, so you don't ruin anybody's goddamn day. And we try not to do that. We don't want to. So if you haven't read this book, put it on your stack. Go read it. Come back and catch up with us because we think you'll like it. Now, as I said before, I've been super excited about this book for a multitude of reasons. I love Tom Reilly. I've never seen Tom Reilly draw anything I didn't like. But this is the first, as far as I know, the first foray that Walter Mosely has done in comics. And I'm a huge Walter Mosely fan. He is one of the best, in my opinion. Let me not do that. He's one of my favorite detective fiction writers. I love Devil in the Blue Dress. I love the Easy Rollins stories. I love that character, and partially because he is a detective, but he's not a cop. Like there's this like jazzy edge to him.
Yeah.
It's great. But like Walter Mosely, especially those books he did in the '90s, White Butterfly, Red Death, like just solidly good books. So I'm really excited to read these. Plus, Walter Mosely has long been a comics fan. If you read his stuff. Very much modeling it after a lot of the characters that you see in like Luke Cage, a lot of the blaxploitation characters. Like some of his stuff is very much tapped into that vein, and so you can tell that the impetus of that is there. So, kind of 30,000 foot view. What did you think about the first issue, man?
Oh, I liked it. Yeah, I liked the story was good. I mean, it's a setup issue, but it does that well. I like the art in the book. It's the word minimalist comes to mind. I don't think that's accurate, but it's just it just feels like a classic type style.
Classic is a good way of putting it.
No detail lines to speak of. And I really appreciate that as a whole. Because we see a lot of comic book work today with lots and lots of detail, and it's great. I mean, I love it, but I I don't lose appreciation for what you can do with, just a few solid lines.
This isn't scroochy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very, very good. And the reason I wanted to recommend this book for the roundtable is because when's the last time The Thing has had his own comic book? Two, it's a creative team that we've not done before and don't do things very often that come up in our wheelhouse. So it just seemed like a much more appropriate book than the Venom book, which Venom has been talked about a lot. Al Ewing's been talked about a lot. Yeah. So and
I'm glad you, like I said, had I had time and had I actually walked over and looked at the shelf instead of just running up to my local comic shop and grabbing my pull box and paying for it and not really flipping through and seeing things, I would have definitely that would have been my first choice, just because I love the character. It's one of those characters, I love the character, but I don't, like, I'm not reading Fantastic Four.
I got a lot of those too.
Yeah, it's just, I was really curious to see what they can do with it, and I'm glad we did. I thought the book was fantastic. Like I said, I love Tom Reilly. I've actually got a Conan head sketch that he did at the house in my little portfolio. He is, Astro Hustle, I adored when he did that. Unfortunately, with the writer of that book, right after Astro Hustle came out, the writer got Me Too'd. And unfortunately he was tied to that book, so it's been a minute since I've seen him do anything really big.
Yeah.
But I ain't mad at this. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And it really does have that classic, it evokes like Kirby without being Kirby. You know what I mean? Like, he's not trying, like, he's not Tom Scioli, like, he's not trying to really, like, distill something pure Kirby, but he really does have a Kirby-esque feel to him, especially when he's drawing the thing. Like, there's a cartoonism to it that he knows what he's putting on the page. Almost had a Greg Smallwood feel to it as well, in certain panels, I felt like. But it's really hard to draw those connective lines because it just is what it is. And speaking of it being what it's being, the actual story itself is a lot of fun too. Mm-hmm. So, look, Ben Grimm, kind of famous for having those days where he just, he wakes up and has a bad day. That's well within his history, and this seems like it's going to be one of those days, and it's kind of sad because by all appearances, he's had one of those really great weekends. So our buddy Ben comes home from a weekend of fishing. He's gone down to, I guess he was in South America, shows up with some sea bass and some a lobster or something, and he's excited. He wants to see his family. He wants to see Reed and Susie and Johnny and the kids and everything. And he gets in there and they're all gone. And it turns out like they had a last minute trip to Russia that they had to go give a conference on, and so they're not home for him to greet him. And he's like, well, he's kind of bummed out because the house is quiet and he was looking forward to catching up with everybody. So naturally, what does he do? He picks up the phone and calls Alicia, like, let me get my main squeeze, find out what she's up to, see what my girl's doing. Well, she has had a recent art show, and there is a new exhibitor who is whining and dining her, handsome looking fellow. And Alicia's blind, so when we see her, she's walking down the street and he's got her by the arm, kind of coupley looking, but not, there's a number of things. It very easily could be taken the wrong way, which I think our boy does. He sees that and gets a little jealous, and is not liking it. He when he gets jealous, he's kind of an old school dude. He raises his voice a little bit. Well, this art, what would you call? I don't know what to call him. Not a distributor, but
a promoter.
A promoter, yeah. He's like, okay, you're a big dude and kind of violent, so I'm gonna mace you because that seems like, I can't blame the guy. So he maces the thing, and the thing is pissed, and he can't see, and starts swinging his big old meat fist, and knocks a car across the street. And this is bad, right? Like, you've just damaged property, and you've disturbed the peace and done all kinds of stuff. So the cops show up, and he gets handcuffed, and they put him to sleep with a little gas. And he goes to jail. Wakes up in jail. Finds his buddy Hercules there. Of course, why not? And so what's great about that is Herc's in his old suit, and so you really don't know where this fits in continuity wise. because that's not the suit that Herc wears anymore. Herc also is kind of famously right now abstaining from partying and beverages of the alcoholic variety, and just not really being a straight edge, but kind of being a straight edge dude, and is in space, not on Earth, in jail. And so, they're talking and they need to break out, except the room is like handmade vibranium synthetic and can't get out. There's problems, right? Meanwhile, while all this is happening, something else is going on in New York. Like, something else around Yancey streets taking place, and there's this shrouded ghost-like reaper of a figure who's going around causing problems. And we don't really know who he is or what he's doing, but like he walks by this young couple who are making out and kind of causes some issues with them and throws dude's body through a car window when the guy tries to buck up, because you don't do that. And then he goes into this house in this apartment, and there's this this guy who's sitting there seemingly minding his own business, but when he sees the Reaper, he gets very defensive, and he very much can see this. And I mean, granted, if a Grim Reaper walked through my front door, I'd be a little not happy with the situation either. Like, I can't blame the dude, but he goes over to this poster, and this is very much like a Misty Knight meets
Pam Grier.
Pam Grier, thank you. Type woman on the poster, and he's like guarding her. Like, you can't have her, she's mine. And this is a poster on the wall.
Oh, then it must have been just Pam Grier.
I've got a picture of Pam Grier on my wall. I'm not joking. I have a signed picture of Pam Grier on my wall. And that woman, yes, would marry her today. Ooh. And, go to jail.
Mercy.
She is absolutely stunning. Met her in Hot Springs a few years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She was at a local comic show there. Lovely, lovely, lovely woman. Shared a donut with me. And then signed my photograph that I paid her money to give, because but it was special to me. And it's one of a kind in my bedroom. So, and Roger walks in and is like, I have questions.
I bet.
So no, but yeah, back to the story though. Like, is guarding this thing, and Mr. Deathhead just dispatches him. I don't know what to call him, so I'm going to call him Mr. Deathhead. That seems about as good of a name as any. Kind of dispatches the dude, but reaches over and hands him something, this glowing thing, a little obelisk, little tube, necklace type thing, just places it there, and then that's all you see. Well, back over to our hero. About the time that they find a way to escape this jail cell, Reed walks in and bails him out. And it's like, dude, I wasn't going to let you rot in jail. Like, now we have damage to pay for. I've got to get back to Russia. But I'll be home in a day or two. Just chill out. Like I know you have some issues going on, but pump your brakes, homie. Go sit in the Baxter building, go work out, pump some iron. So he does. Ben goes back, but he's pissed at Alicia. She's pissed at him. She is very upset by his behavior. Kind of lets him know that they're taking a break. They're pulling a Ross and Rachel. They're calling it splitsies for a little bit. She needs to go spend some time on her own, and he needs to think about what he's done wrong. So he does what, I guess modern single folks do, and pulls up a dating app. And there is this little pixie-like figure who is walking him, and I can't tell if this is a real pixie or if this is an aspect of the dating app. And she starts walking him through how to use the dating app, and something feels wrong with this.
You don't say.
Yeah, and it turns out that something probably is wrong with this, but that's without spoiling the entirety of the thing. That's unless you feel like there's something else that I may be left out. That's kind of where the second issue ends, and speculating, but I think the story hints at this too. There's some tether from Mr. Deathhead floating around being a Grim Reaper skeleton guy, and this dating app, obviously. You see that it hints at it kind of in heavy-handed ways. It looks like Ben's going to find himself in some trouble before he is able to solve the issues here. But he's on his own doing so. And like I said, I love the story. It was fun. It felt it was cool because it does feel out of continuity. You're not really sure where this takes place in time. There's a really interesting character design for one of the figures who shows up wearing tires as gloves. You get this. It's got very serious tones to it, while at the same time not forgetting that it's a comic book. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. So again, I love Walter Mosely. I think he's an amazing writer, and if you've ever read his stuff, he's fantastic at detail. He's fantastic at characterization. His dialogue is wonderful, and so it makes sense that it translates to comics. But that doesn't often happen. How many times do we read comics that from people who are film writers or they're novelists or something, and it just doesn't really translate that well. Something happens and they can't jump from one literary medium to another, and that didn't happen at all in this book. Yeah. I think part of that is the strength of Tom Reilly doing his storytelling, but part of that is the guy knows what he's doing. He's just talented. He's skilled that way.
Well, and something else is, as far as these guys that are novelists that come over and write comic books that are vulnerable to do is over dialogue,
right?
And he lets the art work on its own in lots of panels in this. I appreciate that in any book, but I really notice that when it's a novelist that's coming into the world.
Yeah, well, and so far as you have, like, you just opened one, you have entire panels that have no words whatsoever,
a lot of
entire
that.
pages, and that's great because he's still getting a story told. It's just really, really fun. He has a great voice for Ben Grimm.
Characters felt right on point,
and it felt classic. Like everything about this book really does have this classic, almost timeless feel. As far as even Herc, as they're sitting in jail.
Yeah, Herc. I like the classic version of Hercules.
Yeah.
And ever since I was a kid, I really have, because he's so ridiculous. He's just a very ridiculous character. And the way he's recounting how he got into this jail, I thought was really funny. I remember him Lovely Maiden and flagons of mead called absinthe. Hercules on absinthe. Not a good idea.
The Green Fairy.
Not a good idea. Yeah.
And there's almost in a lot of the backgrounds, sometimes there's this retro kind of 60s vibe to it.
Yep. The art reminds me of Archie comics.
A little bit, yeah.
That kind of vibe, yeah.
I had a really fun time too. I can't wait to see what they do and where they go. And what's really cool about this is, I know you're not. I'm one who's prone to kind of speculating, trying to figure out where the story's going to take us, especially in episodic form from issue to issue. This leads you a lot of seeds to kind of figure out what's happening and where they might be going. But I really don't care. Like, I'm not speculating on this because it's just a fun ride. And this is the first comic in a long time that I shut the issue down. It's like, oh, I can't wait. And then I don't try to figure it out for myself. I'm just like, tell me a story, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in. You have got me locked in. Tell me a story.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to it.
Something else, just a little side note that I thought was funny is whenever Ben confronts Alicia and fellow in the street, he's wearing shorts and a little button up. I think that kind of stuff's funny when the thing is wearing clothes like that. Yeah.
When he comes back from fishing,
he's wearing overalls. Yeah.
That I loved. I opened that that was kind of the thing. Immediately, I open up this story. Ben Grimm's wearing overalls. I'm just like, oh, this is gonna be fun. He's been fishing. He is such a he's just a blue collar dude, right? And he's a blue collar dude who is constantly surrounded by the geniuses of the world. And I really appreciated that they didn't need to get into, how did the Thing become the Thing? There was a little bit, if you're familiar with some of the history, there was a little bit of a this man, this monster kind of vibe to it, where he's working through the shit of kind of who he is and his. Well, and what's really fun in this, and what I think is really a strength of the story is, it's not Ben's size that gets him in trouble, and that's something that in the past Ben has always, he's always had a thing with. Like, I'm now 6'6" and 400 something pounds. I'm made of rock. I'm ugly. My brow is the size of most people's forearms. That's not what gets him into a mess in this. It's the human part of Ben that gets him into a mess. His inability to like temper himself, and his hot-headedness. And it's a very human story featuring, arguably a non-human. Another thing I thought was funny is when he's filling out the dating app, he's going through and they're asking him all the questions, male, and it says race, and he thinks about it for a second. It's like non-white, like he's looking at his hand. Yeah. He's like, "Oh, I'm orange."
I thought it was funny when he said, "Oh, I'm about 432 pounds, about 432,
give or take." An ounce or three. Jordy Bellaire's colors. Her colors really fit the vibe of the book, and they fit Tom Reilly's art really well, because her colors are they're very plain. And this is Jordy Bellaire. If you've ever seen her colors, like, she knows how to use every color in the spectrum, right? Like, if you've seen some of her stuff, she is not scared of hot pink. She's not scared to blend. She's not scared to do that overlay where it looks like they have spray painted colors across each other. Look at a Jordy Bellaire sunset that she colors in the comics. Like, she is adept. But in this, she backs up. She's like, okay, what is the spirit of this book? It feels classic. It feels like a retro, timely book. And she uses a lot of those, matte colors to really drive home what this is. And it's just fun. Like, I just left this book smiling. And speaking of smiling, like, the cover that you have, you picked up one of the variant covers. Yeah. Is that Lee Bermejo that did that? Who is that?
Let me look, see who this
because
is.
It is absolutely stunning.
It is Lee Bermejo.
Okay.
It sure is. How about that?
It's
yeah.
Just I want, like, more of that, please.
Right.
So are you staying on the book? What do you think?
Yeah. I'm gonna see. Like I said, this is a character. I love the character, the Thing, and I can't recall the last time he had his own book, so I definitely want to see what they do with this.
Now, I've got, and I should have pulled them out, I've got some of the mini stories. Like, I think there was a 12-issue The Thing run back from the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, he had his own book for quite a while back then, yeah.
I've got that, so it's really cool to see him brought back and characterized like that again. It does have me thinking, though, and it's not the book that did this. Like, now that I've read this, I'm like, okay, well, what's Ben Grimm been up to in continuity? Like, what's he doing now? So part of me wants to know what's happening in the Fantastic Four. Is Dan Slott still writing that, I think?
I think so, but I don't keep up.
I haven't either. There's a part of me that's curious and wants to see if what's going on there, but I haven't read it. I don't really know anybody who is, which is a shame, because it's Fantastic Four, and it hasn't been good in a long time. And I'm using that saying I haven't read it in a long time. If you're reading it, sell me on it. Like, if somebody's like, I would love to give me a reason to go back and check it out, because maybe I'm missing something. So if you're one of the people who's currently on that book, like, jump on our Facebook page or hit us up on Instagram or Twitter, and just tell us that we're missing good stuff, and I'll take your word for it. I'll go read it. Yeah. Because I'm kind of curious to see what he's been up to and what he's been doing. Because the last time I read him in a book was the issue of the Mortal Hulk, where he and Hulk fight on the pier. Yep. So, and I don't know anything about his comings and goings beyond that. So, but I'm excited. So, well, did you read anything else this week?
Well, I did. I read a lot of other stuff catching up, but the book I'm going to talk about is something that I read a few years ago. This came out in 2016. Gosh, I can't believe it was that long ago.
I can't believe the phrase 2016 is that long ago.
I know.
Is a true statement.
It just seems like I bought this a couple of years ago. Yeah. Anyway, this is from Dark Horse. This is number 1 in the World of Tanks rollout. This is by Garth Ennis, Carlos Ezquerra, and Michael Atiyah. I bought this because I'm a big fan of both Garth Ennis and Carlos. The creative team. And it's a war comic, which I've read a ton of Garth Ennis's war comics. I guess there are some I haven't read, but it's got to be very few, because I've tried to pick up every one of them. This was a promotional book.
I was going to say, do you know what World of Tanks is?
I found out when I picked up the book. It's a promotional book for a game, the game World of Tanks. And if you bought the book, it came with some kind of code that you used in the game or something. So, as a result, I mean, this isn't a $1 book in back bins. It's like a $15 book. that kind of thing, because people actually snatch these up. I bought it just for the comic book itself. And it was hilarious to me that this is a video game comic book written by Garth Ennis. Garth Ennis is not a video game guy. This is not. So it's just, this is an excuse for him to write and get a war story published is what this is. That was just funny to me that,
somebody who was on the team who designed this game has got to be a comics fan, right? Like that's because you don't get Garth Ennis and Carlos Ezquerra on a promotional book unless you already know who they are.
Yeah.
Because those men aren't cheap.
Yeah.
Well, and rest in peace to Carlos Ezquerra.
Yeah.
But like that person had to have known what they were doing because they got the best war story writer possible and one of the premier 2000 AD artists.
Yeah.
To do that. So somebody knew what they were doing.
Yeah. Of course, Carlos Ezquerra most famously was one half of the creative team for the Judge Dredd character. He created the look and design of Judge Dredd, which was interesting. That's an interesting story in and of itself because it was basically the antithesis of what John Wagner, the other half of the creative team, had visualized. But Carlos was like, this hard-ass fascist character dressed up in this absurd, over-the-top, quote-unquote, patriotic way kind of represents
everything.
I mean, he's so over-the-top with his, quote-unquote, belief in the law. He wants to be loud and present the law in a loud way. Interesting little side note there. The story takes place in 1944. This is a couple of British tank battalions moving their way across Normandy after D-Day, and they intercept a group of German Panzer tanks. And the story is about them essentially clashing with panzers as they move across the Normandy countryside. At this point, when the British tanks were being utilized, the men that were running the tanks had no battle experience on D-Day. They had been trained on how to use a tank and how to move in formation and follow orders, but they'd not actually, very, very, very few of them, sometimes none of them had any battle experience. Which is the kind of thing Garth Ennis really likes to write, is when, his whole thing about war and his fascination with it is you take normal everyday people and put them in the most extreme circumstance there is, and how people respond and react and handle that is fascinating to him and as me as well. That's why I'm such a war buff, and specifically World War II more than any, and Vietnam. The artwork on this it's Carlos Ezquerra. It's great. It's got a very unique look. I really, there's a big part of me, and it looks great. The colors look great. These battle scenes
I know what you're about to say, and I agree.
I would really like to see the black and whites of this. I really would, because I've seen a lot of Carlos Ezquerra's black and white back in his 2000 AD days, and I just love his black and white look. But I can't recommend this book enough. If you have any interest in war stories, this is definitely going to be one that you're going to dig. It's a very easy story to follow. It's two tank battalions on the battling across the countryside. And without spoiling it, the further you get into the story, the more the conflict goes from, a mechanized focus to a personal focus.
Right.
And the leaders of these tank battalions stop thinking in a way of the war effort and more start thinking in the way of this is now personal. And, they're not exactly following orders like they should. They're not exactly following the war strategy like they should. It goes from being a support the war effort to a very personal effort, which is really the personal effort in war is really what war is.
Yeah.
You're not and you hear veterans say this stuff, that have been in battle. You're not when you're in battle, you're not thinking about shooting your gun and killing the enemy because of mom and apple pie.
Yeah.
You're thinking about doing it to save the guy next to you. It becomes a very personal battle, not a patriotic battle. Yeah. And that's, another version of this. As the deeper you get into the story, the more these characters' motivations become that. And Garth Ennis does a great job in writing and presenting the way people change when they get put in these situations. And then Carlos, the way he illustrates these fight scenes and the facial expressions of men, going through these extreme circumstances. It's great. I mean, and it gets below the definitely gets below the surface of the myth of the German Panzer tanks being just these superior machines that are unstoppable. That was war propaganda from the Germans. The Panzer tank was a no joke. I mean, it wasn't a rolling piece of garbage, but they were hardly invincible rolling machines. They were formidable, no doubt about it. But, one thing he does a lot in his books is he makes sure and points out that men win wars, machines don't.
Right.
So there's a lot of that in here too. And it's he addresses that in the first issue. Like, these super tanks, these Panzers, well, they had a lot of problems too. And the men running them, the Germans running them, they had to make sure to keep these things running. Yeah. And and that's something else that he does on that note as far as the Germans. He humanizes the German soldiers as human beings, and he doesn't just out and out paint them as villains. So if you were, say, sensitive, let's say you're a German and you're sensitive to how German soldiers of World War II are depicted, I would think that this would be a book that you could easily read because it doesn't paint them as being straight up evil Nazis. It paints them as everyday men doing a job, type thing. So it's definitely, I think it's definitely worth a read if you're looking for a very human story. It's not fantastic, in the way that I mean, like fantastical or like a superhero comic would be. It's just a very ground level human story. And
on a few notes, I've never been in the military. I don't know what that's like. I did work for them for a few years, and the job that I did was live immersive training. My job was to facilitate training for soldiers who were going to be deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, the Syrian Peninsula, just like in this areas, or not Syrian Peninsula, Syria, and by and large, a majority of soldiers that we trained were 19 years old. They were 20 years old. These people couldn't go out and buy a beer.
Yep.
And we're training them to, perfect example when I explained to people what I did, part of my job was to make sure that that these soldiers were trained so that a 19-year-old farm boy can step out of the combine in Iowa, walk on to base, get given his rifle, and be a soldier. Because he's going to get shipped halfway around the world where nobody looks like him, nobody speaks like him, very few people worship like him, and he's expected to police that place, not to salt the fields, but they were expected to police that place and keep things safe. And how do you do that, and how do you go about that? And the answer is training, and it's being a human. And part of what we did was cultural training as well. Now, I don't think you see any of that in World War II very often because they weren't doing cultural training. They weren't policing.
No, different warfare.
Different type of warfare, and different world completely. But as far as like the humanizing element, there's been different cinematic representations of that. One of my favorite scenes, it's not my favorite movie by any means, but the movie Saving Private Ryan. There's two scenes in that movie where one is there's a German soldier and American soldier, and they're both trying not to die. Yep. Essentially, and it's that very like neither one of them gave a shit The American soldier didn't give a shit about the red, white, and blue at that moment. He just wanted to keep breathing. The German soldier didn't care about Hitler. He wasn't trying to. He didn't care about the master race. Quote unquote. He cared about walking out of that building, and it humanizes it. Also, in that, the other scene is the tank battle from Saving Private Ryan. Where you have the guy in the tower and they're moving the tanks in. I love that scene. And again, Saving Private Ryan is not my favorite war movie by any means. There's a lot of criticism of that movie, and some of it's deserved, and some of it I think is just a little over top. But regardless, that scene is wonderful because it depicts on how trained these people these were, and how everything on no matter which side of the foxhole you were on, the dedication that you had to your unit, to your fellow men and soldiers there. And just really how trained the German soldiers were. I'm a big fan of motorcycles. I think you and I have had this conversation, and the history around the birth of the American Motorcycle Club, like specifically your one percenters. Yeah. You had guys returning from. It started when they returned from World War II, but there was it got heavier after Vietnam. But you had guys returning from war, and you had these American soldiers who would soup up their Harleys to go have fun, to get that adrenaline rush, and to join with their brothers. But they brought back a lot of German military paraphernalia, the helmets that they wore. They all had you would have a lot of former American GIs with knives on their belts that were swastika knives, that were death head rings were common and stuff like that, which has become a thing now, and it's taken on a life of its own. Those soldiers weren't doing that. They didn't bring that stuff back because they had any. These weren't like neo-Nazis. They were war trophies. They were war trophies, and they respected the German soldiers' military dedication. Like you can go back and you read these interviews from these World War II vets that come back, and they ask them, "Well, why do you have this stuff?" It's like, dude. And they spoke about it in a way that was almost like two football teams playing. It's like, man, the way that they were in formation, the way that they refused to, they didn't retreat, they were formidable. They were a formidable opponent, and we respected their military prowess, and that's why we brought that stuff. And that's weird. And you almost to understand that, you have to set aside who they were and what they were fighting for, right? The Nazis. You have to set.
Well, and it's easy to do that in so many cases because, these were young men drafted into the war. Yeah. That didn't, many of them were not Nazis. They were drafted into the war. They had to fight. And, at a certain point anyway in World War II, if you were a German soldier, you had to keep moving forward. You would be shot. The Americans weren't that way.
No.
But the Germans had equal admiration for American soldiers because the American soldiers, they...
And the British soldiers.
And so there's a lot of that back and forth. But but on tanks specifically, have you watched the David Ayer movie?
I have not. No,
oh, it's so good. It's called Fury. It's just about tank battalions. Brad Pitt is amazing in it. But I cannot recommend that movie enough. It's a great war movie, but the tank battles in that movie are just they're so good. And if you've got a surround sound system by chance, it's wonderful.
I bet it is. I'll put that on my list, see if I can find it.
Man, it's good
to watch it because I need to see that. But it's weird being from the South. I mean, the show's called Southern Fried Geekery. There's a lot of that when you think about Confederate history. It's almost a thing like the reason for the war is not necessarily the reason for the people who are fighting the war. A lot of the soldiers who were in the Civil War wearing gray those soldiers did not care about the institution of slavery. Now, my opinion, the Civil War was 100% about slavery. There's not a question about that.
That's not an opinion.
Yeah, that's not that is just it is what it is. And if you have an issue with that, I'm sorry that you landed on the wrong side of intellect. But the individual soldiers, they didn't care. Like the majority of soldiers that were fighting really did buy into that I have to go fight in this war because it's my state. These weren't people who were fighting for the institution, the decrepit institution of slavery. These were 18, 16, 15-year-old boys who were drafted in. And so it's that kind of thing. You almost have to separate that. And it's being from the South, I think we're called to do that more so than anything. It's like, okay, like this person was not necessarily a bad person. He was fighting for a bad thing. And he may not have known why he was fighting. At that time.
Well, he knows why he's fighting because, he's been forced to.
Right.
you don't have a.
That's what I'm saying. He look, you have people who are illiterate. You have these boys who are getting drafted, and they're fighting for their state. We think about the propaganda around the reason for the Civil War now that was just as rife back then. He did not know that he was fighting because some dude jackass in a suit seceded from the Union to save the institution of slavery.
Yeah,
he just knew a war was happening.
Protect your state is what they were told, and that's why, that's one of the things about. Okay, and this is the last war point I'm going to make. But that's one of the things that General Sherman capitalized on. Is he realized that these boys were fighting because they believed they needed to protect their home. Yeah. So he started attacking their home. Yeah. And they abandoned the Confederate battle in droves.
Yeah, when you don't have a home to fight for anymore.
Yeah. So he knew that. He knew that the average soldier's not fighting to conserve the Confederacy. They thought they were defending their home in Virginia or Georgia, more accurately, so Sherman just started burning down
everything.
And that, it's interesting propaganda. Sherman has been painted as a monster.
Yeah.
However, that is propaganda. And if you go back and really study what he did saved probably millions of lives because it ended the war much faster than it was on track to. And what he did made an enormous difference to the war effort.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, he let folks know he was coming. He let folks know to get out of the way.
Well, he didn't. He didn't have to let them know. He was making a very loud path, because he wanted attention and he wanted people to know what he was doing. Sherman's a fascinating character in history.
And just to reiterate, this is not me or us defending the Confederacy, pretend it was decrepit. I'm glad it was destroyed. They're traitors to the nation. Fuck Nazis. All that fun stuff. I like saying that. Fuck a Nazi. But there was a very nuanced understanding to the men on the ground and to the women on the ground. Who the nurses that were there too. These decisions that caused these things were not made by the majority of people who died. So I think that's books like this, the one you're talking about, and I haven't read it, but just the world around that do a good job of explaining why war is hell.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to bring us up a little bit.
That wouldn't take much.
So, you know what's better than that? The apocalypse. So the end of the world. Remember earlier when I said that I wasn't done heaping praise on Vault Comics as a publisher?
I remember.
Well, I'm going to heap a little praise on Vault Comics as a publisher. I know I sound like a shill. I know that I sound like a dog with a bone that's just talking about my new favorite toy. But the hit rate with me from this publisher is outstanding. Like, I don't know if they sacrificed a goat. I don't know if there was a virgin involved or what, but there is something
probably not
magical.
Any virgins involved.
Oh, not anymore.
Yeah. I'm gonna make a wild gamble and say no.
Yeah, I don't know. But there's something magical happening in that publishing house because the quality of stuff that they're putting out is just incredible. For a small publisher, for a newer publisher, I've never seen anything like it. Not even Avatar had a hit rate like this, and I loved Avatar.
Aftershock.
Maybe.
With a lot of buzz about Aftershock when they first started.
Yeah, but Aftershock died down after about 2 years. This is still going really strong. Like, Vault is an old, like, it's going into its probably third or fourth year now, maybe longer. I'm not sure, but like, they just continue pumping stuff out. And so shout out to them as a publisher because they are doing incredible work. This past week, a new series debuted from a creative team, and really it was the writer that got me to pick this up, but I'm glad I did because the writing was not the writing was good, but the writing is not the strong point. It's the art to me that's the strong point. It's written by Ram V, drawn by Anand RK, with Anisha and Didikar on the letters. So the story takes place in California, but it's not the California that you and I know and love. It is a California in the future, and apparently, and you don't find this out in the story, you have to read the back matter. There's on the back page, it kind of gives you some history. A meteor hits the Earth. It's the apocalypse. Bad things have happened. Crops have died. Everything is ruined. The government's gone. And this book takes place in and around Bakersfield, California, where it was. And Radio Apocalypse is literally the last radio broadcast, and it's just a dude in a tower in the middle of Bakersfield trying to let folks know where they can come to. So it's very kind of like the road, like there's a beacon, like come here for what's left. And there's these little settlements in and out, but like you can imagine, necessities are scarce and people are running out of resources. So Bakersfield, by all intents and purposes, at least in the scope of the story, is the last vestige of civilization. And it's a dude with a radio, and he's got his vinyl, and he just plays music, and he talks to the people who are out in the fields during the day and collect things, people who are guarding the towers, just to let them know, hey, like, you're still here and I'm still here, we're good, like, right now. This very comforting thing. In doing that and drawing people together, the radio reaches out, and like I said, there's been other little small villages or whatever fall, and people are struggling to survive, and they're trying to, like, when one place falls, they try to get to another place. So you've got these two characters who have been kind of wandering together, heading towards where they think the radio is broadcasting from. One of them is named California. Interestingly enough, I guess that's her nickname. The other one is Tan, and they're kind of a couple. But California's been hurt. I'm going to use say she. It actually doesn't give you California's gender. It doesn't tell you anything about them. They look to be young girls. They look to be young teenage girls, but it could also, just the way it's drawn, you can't really tell. It could also just be a young dude with like long hair. We don't know. I'm going to decide it's a queer relationship and that these are two young girls that are trying to survive with each other. And like Tan is helping get California to where they're going, but Tan's hurt. Like, Tan's not going to make it. Meanwhile, in and around this like Bakersfield settlement, there's this kid named Rion. He's called Ree for short, and he is an orphan, and he's been an orphan. And him and his buddies, when one settlement falls, the first people who get thrown over the wall and kicked out to save resources are the kids who don't have anybody looking out for them. It's the orphans and stuff. And so they've been cast out, and so they come to the Bakersfield thing, and they're on the outside looking in. Well, they sneak in, and they're looking for... They're thieves, right? They're trying to steal things that might have value so they can kind of come back and trade it and buy their way in, sell people back their own products, things like wire and copper and things that might have different metals that are malleable that they can use from. Well, they break in and they get caught, and there's this old dude who is just like, are you... If this is you good for nothing rusters, which is apparently scavengers in the area, if I find you, if I catch you, it's your ass. We're gonna throw you over the wall. 10 minutes to midnight, and when it's going dark, and the Xynos are going to eat you, and what these Xynos are, I think is how you pronounce it. They're like these mutated, weird, irradiated dog things that roam the outskirts and eat everybody after dark. But they're only out and about really after dark. That's when they're the most dangerous. So he catches Ree and like brings Ree in, and like he gives Ree an option, like, you can do that, throw you over the wall, or like, I caught you stealing, you can work off your debt. Like, the old man's not a monster, right? Like, he's got a little bit of a soft spot. He realizes what's happening with this kid, and the kid's story about being an orphan kind of like softens him up a little bit. It's like, yeah, like, those are your options, and kid's just like, Ree's like, I mean, that's not very, like, that's not exactly great options here, bro. And he's like, well, that's what you got, kid. Mm-hmm. So choose one. He's like, I guess I'm gonna stay here and work off my debt. While all that happens, Tan and California know they're really close to Bakersfield, and they're trying to make it by night. And how these two girls have survived as far as who knows? Like, they have their wits about them, but California just can't go anymore. Like, she's done. And so they stumble upon this old fueling station, this old gas station, and Cal's like, look, we're both not gonna make it there. I'm gonna hole up here. You go to them, get help. You can sprint. Like, you can go and come back and just get me. Like, go get help and then come back and get me. Worst comes to worst, sun goes down, I'll hold up in here, hide, and just be okay. And Tan's not loving this, like, but they don't have a choice, so she's got to go. So Tan does, and it's this kind of getting the gang together type of story, because where Tan gets to is the same place that Ree is, and it's the same place that the radio apocalypse is being broadcast from, same place where the old man has his setup. But Tan gets there too late to really do anything. And there is this guy who's in charge of the settlement, who's in charge of what's left of Bakersfield. And he's like, look, My job is to keep people alive, people who come here, and that's my job. I have got 196 souls in this building. I'm not sending a group out to go get your friend. I'm sorry, I can't do that. They will not be back in time. The Xynos are it's too dangerous. We have to wait to first light. We have to. We don't have a choice. Or you can walk out that gate and go back into your friend, and I'll have 195 souls here. My job is to save people. They don't like this, and you know, Tan goes up to the door, and she's going. She gets right there to the edge, and there is this heartbreaking scene where she is just right at the gate, and she wants to go after California, and she just hits her knees, and she's sobbing because she knows if she can't make it back. So it's death. And it like the door just shuts in front of them, and it really is heart wrenching. Like it's one of those panels like you talked about. There's no words on that page.
Yeah.
The art does the storytelling, and it just hits you square in the chest. But right at the last minute, something comes over the loudspeaker and is like, "Hey, is there a Tan here? We've got somebody named California on the radio, like that's heard the broadcast, and there's a CB thing happening." And she goes and talks to her, and so Tan's able to tell California what's happening, what's going on, and they're able to talk. And you know, she's like, "Look, you know, we can't make it back. We're coming for you in the morning. Get somewhere hide." And California's like, "Oh, I'm up on the roof. You know, apparently Xynos. The guy was telling me Xynos like they don't do stairs very well. Who knows if that? I don't know.
Me either.
Yeah. So these creatures, I feel like I'm safer here than I'm safer anywhere else. But yeah, don't not come back and get me. But at the last, you know, she's like, "Are there any of these creatures around there?" And she's like, "No, I don't see any." California's lying. California's lying to spare her friend the knowledge of what she's surrounded by. This chick is surrounded by these creatures, and they are coming, and they are nasty, and she's probably not going to make it. In a little bit of a musical tether, because this book is all about music too. Like it's really funny that it keeps happening in some of the books that we read. But there's a note in the front of the book saying this comic was written to playing music over loudspeakers, sometimes on vinyl, sometimes in CDs. Every time you see something in this book that references a song or an artist, I want you to go play it while you're reading this, because that's the way this is meant to be read. It's an immersive experience. So the dude running the radio station reaches up and like, "Hey, like, what's her favorite song?" And you know, Tan's like, "Well, her favorite song is actually her dad's favorite song. It's Bruce Springsteen's "I'm on Fire." And so he grabs the vinyl, starts playing that, and all of a sudden you hear the radio go staticky, and it cuts off. Now they look off in the distance. One of the last panels you see is California on the roof with these barrels tipped over and this liquid on the ground, holding a Zippo. And then everything goes staticky. You can imagine what has happened. You can imagine what they think has happened. If Tan looks off in the distance and they see this fire, this glow in the distance, and everything seems lost at that point. That's kind of where the story ends. There's a few more pages after that where they get into some introspection. Now, this is not my first rodeo in comics. I haven't seen a body. So I don't believe that anybody's dead until you see a body, and sometimes not even then. I don't know that California's dead. You don't see that. It's meant to assume. It's meant to be a cliffhanger. Issue 2 may, like, I was speculating a little bit, unlike I did with the Thing, where issue 2 has me wondering what's going to happen and where they're going to go from. But obviously you're going to see kind of a team up, I would assume, between Rion and Tan. And maybe they're going to go back out, and who knows? There's a multitude of places this story could go, but it's got me linked for a book to have this much weight in it. It really does hit you in the chest. Now that's the story, right? And the story is good. The art to me is better. The art is the only way I can describe it. I wanted not the actual images, but camera angles and the perspectives. It's like somebody took Jim Mahfood and Mike Del Mundo and crammed them in together and made Anand RK, because the way that the camera angles hits, he'll show you, or they will show you like half of people's faces. You don't get a full understanding of what most of these characters look like. Everything is a little bit skewed. It's a little bit off panel. It's a little bit out of focus. It is completely subjective. It's got this modern, almost graffiti vibe, which if you've read some of Ram V stuff in the past, including, I think, Graffiti's Wall was another book that they worked on together. It's meant to evoke this very urban, very maybe mid-90s hip-hop kind of street vibe to the actual art itself. There's a great use of zip tone. I'm assuming this was done digitally, but who knows? But
yeah.
Everything's skewed. Everything is out of focus just to the perfect amount, and it lets your brain fill in the details. None of these people are pretty.
Yeah.
All of these people look like they live in the apocalypse.
Nice.
The use of colors you get, the book is just filled with these. They're all matte. Like nothing is like shiny. Nothing is bright. There are these matte pinks. There's these flat colors. But they are vibrant nonetheless. Like they are electric. Even though it's weird, like it's a blazing hot, like neon green, but it's still matte at the same time, or a flatted color. It's just the whole book took me by storm. Just the hues, the shadow, like everything about this book is spectacular. If this is not done digitally, this is going to be one of those books that I'm going to reach out and buy a page from immediately. I think the last book I did that on was the hell, I can't even think of it. It was the very subversive King of Nowhere book. Very watercolor heavy. That I fell in love with just the art. And so yeah, I can't recommend this enough. Stylistically, it will melt your face. So it's. I mean, just look at, like, I'm going to pass you the page. Look at how nasty these creatures are.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So, man, like, again, hats off to Ram V. I'm loving a lot of stuff Ram V is writing right now. If you're not reading a Swamp Thing run, that shit is taking me by storm. I think it's incredible. So go pick this book up. It is something really cool. Not going to say it's going to be on my best of after one issue. The rest of the issues are packing this much of a punch. It's going to be hard not to have it on my top 10 list.
Yeah.
So, and I think Vault's going to have a heavy presence on my top 10 list.
Yeah. Yeah.
As well they should, man. It's just fun stuff. So, are you reading any Vault stuff?
The last thing I read from Vault was Barbaric.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, I can't think of another Vault book that I've read recently.
Giga. This book has a lot in common as far as visuals with Giga. Too. Not, I say in common. It's not they're not brothers. They're like second cousins as far as like art connectivity goes. This has some of that. So, yeah, go pick this up. Just stunning work.
Yeah.
Standing ovation. 5 out of 5 stars for me.
Nice.
So. And if you want to see some panels, because I'm going to post some, I have not done so yet, but if you want to see what I'm talking about, and if you want to see some of the pictures that from Matt's World of Tanks book done by Ezquerra, and who doesn't, if you don't want to see Ezquerra art, turn this damn podcast off. It's not for you. Go to our Instagram page, look up Southern Fried Geekery Podcast, or you can just look for @SFG Podcast on both there and Twitter. And you can see some of the panels from things that we're talking about. We're going to post some of that gorgeous Tom Reilly art that we were speaking of as well. I'll throw some Red Room panels on there because Matt gushed about it. And it's just a way for it's basically a visual accommodation for a podcast that's meant to speak about visual things. It's the best way I know how to do it, but we try to pair stuff and just show you what we're talking about. For an example, as a companion to what we do on this show. And we're all busy, so I don't put everything on there, but that's just part of it. And if you want to talk about it yourself, you can do so by coming to our Facebook group where you will find us, and we're hanging out. We're talking about things, talking about movies that we watched. Maybe you were listening and you had a TV show that you would recommend to me to watch this afternoon. If you listen to this by that time, number one, you're doing work. That's fast. But throw it on there. Tell us about a TV show you're liking. We'll check it out. And you can do that by, again, searching it in the little space bar. Come join our little family. Or if you have a project that you're working on, you want to pimp something, you can send us an email. We're southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com. We will check your email and hopefully get back to you. Sometimes we're not as diligent about that as I say we. I'm not as diligent about that as I should be. That's my bad. But if nothing else, man, we're gonna lay out the menu for you a little bit. New Comic Book Day is Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Tuesdays, if you're a DC fan, looks like Diamond rebounded a little bit. They got their stuff together after they were hacked, and so we got our new comics in, obviously, as we've spoken about them. And so hopefully things will be on track for this Wednesday. We'll still get new books in. So, Matt, I'm tired of talking. Jump in here and tell me about something you're picking up this week.
The most obvious thing coming out next week that I'm going to talk about picking up is Hulk #1 from the new creative team of Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley. Mad Scientist Part 1 of 6, The Uncontrollable Rage of the Hulk, has reached an all-new level, and nobody, including the Avengers, is prepared to handle it. I can't freaking wait for this.
Yeah,
I can't freaking wait for this.
Taking it back to space. I'm excited. I'm guessing that's probably going to be our roundtable book.
Man, I'm stoked about this.
I know we're Hulk fans, so that's probably on track.
And Donny Cates has just been on an unbelievable, successful tear lately. So what he does with the Hulk, I'm stoked about. And Ryan Ottley's art, his take on this,
it looks cool.
I'm really looking forward to as well. So everything about this, I'm very looking forward to it.
Now, are you reading Donny Cates' crossover?
I'm not reading anything Donny Cates is doing, and it's not. And I've been told countless times that I've really screwed up not reading his Thor run. I started out reading his Venom run. I'm just not a Venom guy. I don't have any. The character just doesn't compel me. I like the old version of the character in the Amazing Spider-Man, but for years what they've done just doesn't compel me. And Thor is a complicated character for me. I feel a way about Thor the way a lot of people feel about Superman. He's so overpowered. I like Thor in the Avengers and his presence in the team, but you put Thor in his own book, and it's really hard for me to be interested. But from what I understand, I've screwed that up, and I should have been on Thor the whole time.
I would say that you would really like it, especially his Thor run, especially the second arc where they bring back, spoiling it, but we've talked about it on the show. So Donald Blake plays a presence in that.
Yeah.
I think you would really like what that does.
That's probably something I'll pick up the trade, and and I rarely do that, but I've just been told so many times.
It's just. As a big a fan of early Image as you are, you need to read Crossover.
I picked up the first issue of Crossover.
The first issue does not give you any inkling of where that story goes.
Okay. Yeah.
Madman is a main character in Crossover.
Oh wow. Oh wait, yes, I remember the concept. Yeah.
Like I was wondering, because it's called Crossover, obviously, and you're wondering where he brings all the Image people into that book. There's one issue where it's about Chip Zdarsky, and it's written by Chip Zdarsky. Chip Zdarsky is a character because the writers are characters in the book, and so are their characters. It's like, I think you would like it just from the continuity and the meta aspect of it all. It's fun stuff. So yeah, it's hot shit, and I'm that way too about Venom. I will say I enjoyed what I read of the way he wrote Venom in that event that they did, the King of whatever it was.
King in Black.
King in Black, yeah. I liked that. He's well written. It's just not a character I care about. Yeah. So I am going to tell you fine folks at home to go pick up a book. I'm really excited about it. It's called Girl Scouts Stone Ghost #1. If that sounds familiar to you, good. It should. You understand art. Congratulations. Here's a high five. Because this is written and drawn by the one, the only, and the great Jim Mahfood. Jim Mahfood, his other Girl Scout stuff was awesome. It is incredible. And so he's kicking it back into gear and bringing us back to that universe for a new 6-issue miniseries. It's going to be super fun. If you haven't ever read that, it's over the top. It's got a hip-hop vibe to it, to the art. Jim Mahfood is incredible. I can't afford him. I would kill to own a piece of Mahfood art. Actually, a good friend of ours went to a comic convention a few years ago and brought me back a sketchbook that has a Jim Mahfood remark on it, and it's just like sketches that he has done, like printed, obviously not original art, but so I own a smidgen of Jim Mahfood stuff. I'm a huge fan. So and there's a variant cover by Peach Momoko. If that's if you like variant covers, and I think Peach Momoko is gorgeous stuff. So who wouldn't want that? So gonna encourage you all to go pick up that hotness, because it's gonna be fun stuff. So. Got anything else we want to cover?
I think we got it.
I think Craig would want you to spend a little bit of money this week. Craig would want you to go pick up an omnibus. I'm going to say, I feel it in my soul. Marvel is putting out Kull the Conqueror Omnibus.
Oh my god!
So look, it's a little Roy Thomas, and you can't say no to that. So it's I like Kull. Like, I find him humorous. So go pick up the Kull the Conqueror Omnibus, put it on your shelf, brag about it, show it to your friends, and that kind of thing. And man, if we don't have anything further, like I said, join us on the socials. Check out our Insta page, like what we're following. Check it out while you're listening to the podcast. Share the podcast with your friends. Word of mouth does wonders when it comes to these kind of things. We would really appreciate you letting folks know that you enjoy it. We would really appreciate you reaching out to us and saying, hey, we think you guys are doing a good job. Or as Matt and I were talking about, like, we think there's some audio issues going on that we're trying to figure out with the levels. Maybe if you know how to solve that problem and can solve it before we do, reach out. Or, just constructive criticism all around. We'll gladly take it. Now, don't be a dick, that being said. We won't respond kindly to such things, but we will appreciate talking to you and connecting with you, because building a community is a big part of why we do this show, because we're all friends, and it's how we met. It's why we like doing what we do. So with nothing further and no more ado, go forth and love some comics.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yep, turkey. I'm smoking a turkey.
Nice.
I am. Got a new brine bucket.
Nice.
I'm 34, excited about my brine bucket.